We are starting to see some of the guests file in, President-elect Trump and former First Lady Melania Trump entering in. We'll see the former Vice President Mike Pence sitting very nearby. Vice President Gore will be there. Former Vice President Quayle, both former President Bush. We'll see President Clinton, President Obama. I mean, it will be a who's who of former presidents in this solitary moment where everyone gathers in honor not just to the individual, but to the office.
Let me bring in Washington Post columnist Eugene Robinson. Now he's also an NBC News political analyst. As we see the soon-to-be president-elect Donald Trump about to take his seat there, greeting Mike Pence. Eugene, your thoughts?
That's quite a moment, isn't it? Because, as you know, those two men have not been close since the Trump presidency. I believe this is the first time they have met and spoken since January 6th, 2021, which was a day that we all remember. It's interesting because today, it looks remarkable to see of these Republicans and Democrats, former presidents, former vice presidents, who have such differences, to see them all together. And that seems remarkable. And I think back to when Jimmy Carter was in office, which was a long time ago. It was almost 50 years ago. And it would not have been remarkable then.
Yeah, just going to point out President Obama, Vice President Al Gore.
Dan Quayle.
Dan Quayle. I was trying to see who that was, yeah.
Yeah. It would not have been remarkable to see this during the Carter years, and nostalgia is, we have to look to the future, we have to look to the present, but there are things that we have lost from the past, and one of them is this: we have become so polarized. Our political culture has changed so much that it's almost stunning to see this sort of comity and common purpose.
Yeah, Eugene, let me just pause for a second.
And Democrats.
This is a remarkable picture we're looking at here.
If you're a body language expert, you're having quite the moment. We just saw former President Bush come in. President Obama immediately stood up. There have been some handshakes.
President Trump, it looked like a cordial greeting among the two of them. Between
Obama and Trump, it looked like some amiable words. I didn't catch, the cameras didn't catch. I don't know if there's been any interaction between former President Bush and President-elect Trump, but there is no love lost there. So it's just, and
here comes the Clintons.
Yes, here come the Clintons. Former President Clinton, former senator, former presidential candidate, of course, Hillary Clinton. So it's one of those rare moments in Washington where we see these close and personal interactions among people who have led and will lead our country.
And Eugene, I'm just wondering who among them was influenced by Jimmy Carter in their presidency?
I guess in a way they all were. Certainly Bill Clinton, the fellow Southerner. Obama and Trump too, in the sense that they were, well, Trump especially was an outsider coming into Washington. Several of these presidents were annoyed by President Carter at various times during his post-presidency when he spoke out, when he disagreed with what the current president was doing. But they all, I think, have this amazing respect for him because he was such a significant figure in our history.
This exchange between President Obama and President Trump continues there, sharing a moment. And of course, President Bush there to President Obama's right.
Well, let's turn to Kristen Welker as we watch these scenes unfold. It is an extraordinarily chatty moment between former President Trump and former President Obama. But let us remember, if you've ever actually attended one of these kinds of services, it's quiet. in there. You're walked in one by one. They're awaiting the family. They're awaiting the hearse. This is a funeral, after all. And so, you know, sometimes there's a little bit of chatter, but mostly it's what you see right there. Everyone waiting for this solemn event to get underway. Kristen.
Savannah, I think when you talk about a body language expert, you're reminded of how extraordinary what we are witnessing is. The fact that you have President-elect Trump and former President Obama in this sustained conversations, exchanging pleasantries and smiles. These are two leaders who have taken barbs at one another for years. Former President Obama with some of his sharpest language for President-elect Trump, referring to him as a threat to the democracy. And, of course, Vice President Kamala Harris, Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff entering as we have this conversation. And you are reminded of the fact that the President's Club is so exclusive and so unique that despite all of the bitter back and forth between Obama and Trump, they are able to sit there together and exchange what appears to be pleasantries.
I'm reminded of Kristen is many have observed that in that so-called President's Club, Jimmy Carter was not the chummiest member of that club. And, you know, we've seen this across the aisle. The Obamas and the Bushes are quite fond of each other, you know, and the Clintons and the Bushes. You know, so there are these relationships. But even when you've seen you've seen images of this from the Oval Office with all the former presidents gathered, where Jimmy Carter's almost on the outside. He never wanted to be part of that club. He never thought of himself as a political insider. He came to Washington, he left Washington, and then devoted his life and his post-presidency to service.
That's right, Savannah. I'm reminded of that image when former President Obama took office and all of the past presidents came to the Oval Office to deliver their counsel, their support for the nation's first black president. How powerful those images are and were. And the fact that President Jimmy Carter, yes, did give counsel to Barack Obama. He also was quite outspoken on his Middle East peace policy. And that created some tensions between the two leaders. But he was not a creature of Washington. And those who knew him, those who worked with him, said that was one of the things that he struggled with, the politics of being here, of getting his legislation passed. He was very focused on the substance. He was not afraid to speak his mind. He was a plain-spoken person. That's part of what distinguished him. But again, you do think back to that moment when President Obama first took office. Jimmy Carter was among those there to give counsel, to give support. And
it's remarkable. I'll bring in Kelly here. It's remarkable as we watch the front rows there and the various presidents, and we also see Vice President Kamala Harris. This on the same week, we should note, Kelly, that she presided over the certification of the election that she lost.
Something she called a sacred obligation and duty to show that the office of the vice president would go forward with that without any personal difficulty having to announce her own name and the fact that she had fewer electoral votes. Al Gore did that as well, and he, of course, is seated among this group. What I am struck by in that second row is that three presidents, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump, were born in the same summer. The oldest among them is Donald Trump. He was born in June of 1946. July of 1946 was George W. Bush, and August of that year, Bill Clinton. Born in the same summer, their presidencies span decades of American life and certainly span political thought. And incoming, the current president, born in 1942, of a somewhat different generation at the front end of that time. And you have what will be a unique moment, because when they gather again at some point, one among them will not be present. That's how unique this moment is, that this constellation of American leadership will be seen in this way only this time.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't miss the Today Show every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific on our streaming channel, Today All Day. To watch, head to today.com/allday or click the link right here.